Okay, so we'll jump right into this, and anybody that that joins a bit later can catch up with us. We will we'll jump right into the introductions and with who's on right now. I'm Bob Espandola, who you've been everyone on the call now has been receiving emails from me. I am from the town of Fairhaven, and I'll just run down the list as I see it on the participants in the sidebar here on the Zoom. So Courtney.
Yeah, I'm Courtney Bird, president of Falmouth Net, which is a nonprofit in Falmouth, whose goal is to bring an alternative to Comcast to Falmouth, fiber optic.
Okay, thank you. And Keith Novo.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. My name is Keith Novo. I'm with the town of Westport, the IT director for the town. We're currently installing, we just installed fiber to all the town buildings, and we're looking to potentially extend that out to the community at this point. So, thank you.
Great. All right, and Carl Allen.
Hi, Carl Allen. I'm a planner in the City of Chelsea Department of Housing and Community Development, and I have point on our digital equity plan, our digital access plan, and our next steps.
Excellent. Okay, David Cole.
David Cole from Town of Westport, member of the Internet Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. Mike Wells.
Mike Wells from Town of Westford. I'm the IT director for the town and schools. I'm also on the Communications Advisory Committee. We're just kind of looking at access and equity in the broadest sense for these things. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Sean McDonald.
Yep, Sean McDonald on the select board in the town of Dartmouth. We just basically started a municipal broadband committee, and due to the fact that Fairhaven started. So, as one good municipal does, they always copy from another. So we're looking to basically ditch Comcast.
Oh. Okay. Okay, thank you. Art Gaylord.
Art Gaylord, town of Falmouth, also with Falmouth Net. I guess in full disclosure, I was also one of the co-founders of Open Cape.
Okay, thank you. And Chris McClure.
Hi, Chris McClure, CIO for the City of Watertown. It's funny, I was working with Josh at MAPC on some of these issues, and now I'm working with him at MBI, so we're excited to do that. We are building out our municipal fiber through the municipal fiber grant, and actually just received a digital equity assessment grant through MBI as we start to explore what expanded broadband and digital equity might look like for Watertown.
All right, thank you. And when we get to later part of the agenda, we'll look at the website that Chris has been building for us. Okay, Jonathan Nunes.
Hey, I'm Jonathan Nunes. I'm the Assistant IT Director for the City of New Bedford. We're currently in the early phases of broadband feasibility. We have a team of about 4 of us. I don't know if they'll all be able to join us today, but I'm at least here to represent New Bedford.
All right, thank you. Sean Gonzalez.
Hi, Sean Gonzalez, Institute Local Self-Reliance Community Broadband Networks. We are, I would say, the nation's leading storehouse of information on municipal broadband and community broadband across the country. And I also happen to live on Cape Cod. Been a little involved with Falmouth Net and Open Cape, and we are tremendous, our organization are tremendous advocates in this space. So use us, please. Oh, and we also run boot camps for groups like this across the country, and our Let's Get Going broadband program cohort, which includes public-private partnerships, of course, but just to let you know. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And let's see, this list on the Zoom is keeps changing on me, so in order. So I think Tom Newton, did I
I'm here, Tom Newton, chair of the Wilbraham Broadband Advisory Committee, and we're pretty knee deep into our project. So we're about to hire a owner's project management firm, and then look to deploy to roll out an RFP in the not too distant future. So we're pretty excited.
Okay, did I miss anybody not from MBI? Okay, good, thank you. Then Josh, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and your colleagues here, and then you can just jump right into the agenda of what you were planning on discussing with us today.
Sure.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. I know many of you and are currently working with many of you, have worked with many of you in the past. For those that I don't know, my name is Josh Eichen. I'm the program manager for partnerships here at the Mass Broadband Institute. I've been here for about a year. I'm overseeing the state ARPA Digital Equity Fund, and I am also leading the statewide planning activities under the Digital Equity Act. We'll talk a little bit more about both those programs and funding streams today. But before we dig into that, I want to introduce my colleagues. I'll turn it over to Cheryl Koss first.
Hi, everyone. It's like weird.
Yeah, I know.
Is it better?
Yeah.
My name is Cheryl Koss. I'm the manager of digital equity outreach and engagement for MBI. I've been here a little bit over 4 months, and I'll be working hopefully with all of you on the statewide digital equity plan, as well as other equity initiatives.
Thank you.
And I'm Ariana Fielding, the digital equity planner here at NBI, and I'm primarily coordinating the municipal digital equity planning program, which I know a couple of you are enrolled in, but we hope to get applications from all of you soon.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, Josh, you can just go right ahead into
Sure.
your
So
topic.
I will share my screen. Oh, actually, Bob, could you let me share my screen so I can do some slides? Yeah, and
There you
while
go.
you're getting that teed up, so I think we can keep this relatively informal. You know, and again, I know that many of you are already engaging in different planning activities and implementation activities with MBI through our existing funding streams. And I know that you all have, this group is convening, around a particular focus of the public-private partnership. So what I want to do today is provide sort of a summary overview of the programs that we have available today. I want to level set up a little bit on digital equity and what we at MBI mean when we talk about digital equity. Give you sort of some visibility into the broader range of funding that's going to be coming down through the federal government in the coming months and years here. And really, we also want to give you some actionable things to do because there are ways for those that are not engaging on any MBI programs. There are ways to sort of get involved and get rolled into some of our activities right now. And we really encourage communities to do so. So let me see here, Bob, if I can.
If you
Let
could
me know when
try.
the screen. Yeah, it still says disabled for participants.
Okay, I apologize. I set this up through our government access coordinator, and I've
No
just sent
worries.
him a message. He should be able to
Okay.
turn it on there shortly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you just right click on Josh's face, then I think you should be able to enable sharing that way, like the 3 little lines above his head.
Whoop, okay, whoops. Here we go. No, that's pin. Apologize for this technical difficulty here. Josh.
I can, I have a background in college radio, and they always said, dead air. There's no worse thing than dead air. So I'll riff a little bit while Bob's sorting this out. So
Okay.
Let me know when if you get it going.
Yeah, I will. I'm still working on it.
Okay,
Sorry.
no worries. So I mean, I think really to dig into all this stuff, so I think, one of the first things that I was going to talk about is defining digital equity and sort of how we are looking at this issue. So, for us, digital equity, and we take liberally from our colleagues at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, is a condition which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. Digital equity is necessary for civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services. So really what we are on this team are focused on is not only getting people connected to the internet, but it's all the things that go along with being able to access telecommunications technology. And that really encompasses, digital literacy, individuals' ability to not only, open a laptop, get it functioning, but to take advantage of all the different tools that are relevant for that individual's life. So whether it's educational resources, health resources, civic and social resources and activities. To us, digital equity, it's the, getting online is not the end, it's a part of the process. We are really looking hard on at a couple of different factors of digital equity. So thinking through the access factor, which I think a lot of you are already engaged in. So like, can an individual or household get online? So we are thinking actively about whether or not all individuals and households in Massachusetts have a fast internet connection, fast enough for their household, which may have 5 or more people, in which case they might need faster internet speeds, and whether or not that internet connection is affordable to that household. Obviously, we are working with many communities, and we really see affordability as probably the primary barrier in the Commonwealth to internet and broadband adoption. We're very focused on devices, so making sure that folks not only have access to quality laptop, personal computer, but also a router, because we know that the router often impacts service quality inside a home. So we're focused on that. And then literacy, sort of like the broad continuum of digital literacy, not only ensuring that the equipment works, but also being able to assess information online and adapt to privacy issues. We look at digital literacy as like a long continuum, and see that as a really critical component of our work around digital equity and digital access here. There's a lot of money coming down the pipe, and there's a lot of money coming down for digital equity activities and broadband infrastructure. And I guess I want to kind of sort of parse those two things. MBI is, as the state broadband agency, will be the administrating entity for the majority of this, for all of the state ARPA fund, which right now is a $50 million budget line item that was legislated in 2021. And we are expecting another $25 million that was legislated in the most recent economic bond bill. So MBI will be operating those funds. We will also be the state administrator for the bulk of the Digital Equity Act and the bulk of the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program funding. We are right now in receipt. Bob wants me to send the file. Yes, I can shoot over to you, Bob. See if I can walk and chew gum here. We are now in receipt of about $5 million in statewide planning grants. So we will be conducting a statewide digital equity plan under the Digital Equity Act, and we are also statutorily required to produce a 5-year action plan under the BEAD program. Those activities are starting imminently. We sort of had a soft launch about 2 weeks ago, but they will be wrapping up later this year, likely towards October, November kind of date. And the plans will inform the deployment of the capacity grants that will be allocated to states for investment. And those allocations have not yet been made. So every state will receive sorry, Bob, I have to connect to my VPN here to get this thing.
Yeah.
Bear with me.
I apologize
So-
again. I didn't have a commercial account, so I set it up through the town. So I will, as soon as it comes,
worries.
share my screen.
Yeah. So long story short, so 2 big funding streams through the feds, Digital Equity Act, BEAD. Every state gets $100 million through BEAD. And then there's a formula allocation on top of that has not been determined by the NTIA. And Sean, please back me up if I get any of this wrong. And then there's also a formula allocation for Digital Equity Act that has also not been provided yet. So we are, we know that there's at least $100 million coming, and likely more on top. How much on top is not yet clear. So the long story short is we're doing these planning activities basically to set the stage for deployment of capital. The BEAD funding is going to support both broadband infrastructure and digital equity programming. The Digital Equity Act funding is only going to support digital equity program activities, non-infrastructure related. That's an important distinction to make. The 2 programs, however, are linked together. And, I say to folks like, why the feds decide to give us 2 programs and not just 1 program is not something that we have a ton of visibility into, but that's how the cards were dealt to us. And so we're kind of rolling with it. but I think, relevant for you all just to know that those are the two kind of pipes that the money is going to move through. And that's broadly the kind of difference between the two programs. Right now, we are, as I mentioned at the top here, Bob, I'm sending this to you right now.
Okay.
We are currently operating our state digital equity fund. The state digital equity fund has two active and open programs. The first is a municipal digital equity planning program that is designed to basically provide resources to communities to conduct a digital equity plan. And my pitch to you here now is that everybody on this call should be taking advantage of that program. MBI covers 100% of the costs associated with, see you, Sean, 100% of the costs associated with the planning program. We will basically provide a list of qualified consultants to a community that chooses to apply. And then those consultants can work with the community to develop a strategic set of action activities, existing conditions analysis, and sort of path forward for applying for future or current funding from state or federal sources. So it's a super easy lift to apply. We've had about 40 municipalities apply so far. I think on this call alone, 5 communities that are engaged right now: New Bedford, Watertown, Wilbraham, Fairhaven, and is there a 5th? Maybe 4. 4 communities who are engaged. So we're grateful for all of your participation. For those who are not engaged, we highly recommend that you take advantage of the program. You can be in touch with myself or Ariana, who I'll make sure you get contact information for, who is operating that program. And yeah, we really hope that you all take advantage. So that's our planning program. On the implementation side of things, we have our partnership program. Carl's got a question. Carl, go for
it. So under the local digital equity planning, is that qualitatively different from the activities that MAPC already did for us?
No, so you are ahead of the game. So Chelsea has already completed. Chelsea, in fact, has, I think, the only official, one of 3 only official digital equity plans in the Commonwealth. So if you want to see an example of what a digital equity plan looks like, Carl, I don't know if you could throw a link in the chat, but the Chelsea Everett Revere digital equity plan is a great example. It was done in 2021 and should provide some context and for what that plan could look like. So that's planning side. And then we have implementation funding, and we're doing our implementation funding through a digital equity partnerships program, whereby MBI is basically designating fiduciary and technical responsibility to 10 to 15 partners across the state to implement programs. They can be implemented in 6 categories. So we have funding available for digital literacy, so continuing digital literacy, devices, ACP outreach, registration and engagement, connectivity, providing devices for folks without stable housing, installing free open Wi-Fi in public housing, which is an output of the work that Carl has done in Chelsea. So one of our first projects is going live in Chelsea shortly. Carl, I think the contracts are getting signed soon.
God bless.
Sign. Yeah. And so those are kind of like the implementation focused categories that we're working on. And so
Josh,
again, yeah,
if
go
I
ahead,
could
Bob.
break in for just a second. So I have the file. Problem is, I can't share it myself. No one on the call can share. So I apologize for that. What I did though is I sent it to the listserv that we have for this group. And so if anybody has it and they can open their email and open the document, and Josh can tell us what page he's on, we can follow along manually.
Yeah, and I know we're kind of moving through this, and actually I'm going to turn the last point over to Cheryl to talk about our last program, which is the Lead for America program, and then I think we can open up for discussions, because again, I know we have to jump at 4:45, and I'm sure you all have questions. So Cheryl, do you want to give just a quick rundown on Lead for America?
Sure. So our last program that we officially have launched and had a couple webinars on in the previous 2 weeks is a Lead for America Digital Equity Fellowship Program. This is a capacity building program for anyone that's participating in our partnership and our municipal planning program to increase their own capacity with a digital equity fellow. Lead for America's American Connectivity Corp is the only existing program like this in the country. And we're the first state that is actually putting together a cohort of 15. That is through a partnership with MBI, Lead for America, and Comcast. They have contributed funding strictly for philanthropic reasons to increase digital capacity across the state. So there's an application, and we are also happy to share that, the application for you guys to apply for a fellow, as well as if you have or work with community-based organizations that are doing, existing work around digital inclusion or equity with community residents, there's an application for fellows to apply. This program is really meant to have homegrown talent, help resolve the issues in their own communities. So it's an excellent opportunity that is being fully funded. So it's a $35K host site commitment that the partnership between Comcast and MBI is fully covering the cost for.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Josh, I wanted to just break in there, if you don't mind, for a minute, and just let this group know that when we I found out as a SERPED commissioner, it's a Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. That's our regional planning district down near us in Fairhaven. I found out about that same program through our last commission meeting last month. They did say that if there was interest in our area, that they'd be willing to serve as the host for that and on a regional shared use for that fellow. So that is something that I'm looking to put an application in for any community that's interested in participating in that to receive the resource through SERPED. And I did review this with my own select board here on Monday night. And they were agreeable to me, initiating that process. So anybody that's in the SERPED territory in one of the 27 communities down near us, if you're interested in that, please let me know. If you have any interest in helping put the application in, please let me know. The deadline is April 1st. So I'd just like to open up for, I see there's a question here from David. Go ahead, David.
Okay. Okay, I'm not muted. I just have an issue on this equity criteria. We have parts of Westport which are clearly disadvantaged, but they don't fit neatly into any of these prescribed zones. That we have one zone that is an equity needing help zone, but it isn't really the area that is most important or most needy from our point of view. And so I'm just wondering how restrictive these requirements are. Are there ways in which we can apply for equity funds to do work in areas that don't qualify as a designated equity zone?
You talking geographically?
Yeah, I think you may be talking about the qualified census tracts. So David, in the context of the municipal digital equity planning program, we know that every community has community members that are impacted by the digital divide. The information that we ask for in the application is designed to help us, basically capture some, relevant demographic information about every community. But there's no restrictions around that. So if you're I think you're referring to the qualified census tracts, which the reason that we use those in there is because that is actually it's one of the potential eligibility criteria that is passed down to the state via US Treasury guidance under ARPA. So a lot of this is compliance related. So qualified census tracts is an easy way to meet a compliance requirement, but it's not the only way. So if your community does not have a qualified census tract, you are not ineligible to receive a planning grant. We just ask that you kind of, if you're saying to us hey, like there's parts of Westport that are really that folks already need and have, you know, real digital equity issues. Make that case to us in the other parts of the application. There's a letter of support that needs to be sent from the executive, either the mayor or the town manager or the chair of the select board. That's an easy place to make that case. So I just say, you know, do not let any of those criteria bar you or discourage you from applying. We have had a 100% acceptance factor under our application. We may go back and ask you some questions about what you put in there, but more than likely, you know, unless you are wildly, you know, want to use the funding for something that's not eligible under the program, then we want you to be part of this. We want and need municipalities to do this because it's really important.
Yes,
Okay.
and you know, as far as it for digital equity purposes, there's more about covered populations, which include aging, low income, incarcerated, English language learners and limited English proficiency, as well as
There's a lot.
yeah, there's about 7 different categories. So I'm sure that you have a number of individuals in your community that fit one or multiple of those categories. So, which makes you eligible.
All right, that's very encouraging. Thank you. We will go explore further on what we can do. Thank you.
David, I'm gonna put Ariana's email in the chat. So Ariana is our point person for the digital equity planning program. Reach out to her. And if you need any help with the application or if you have questions, she's your point person and can help you out.
Okay, good.
And that goes for everybody on the call here. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also should be in the invitation you all received for this meeting. I had the Mass Broadband Institute people, all 3 of them on there. So it should be visible to you there.
Yeah.
Okay, our government access director said he's on the case. He's trying to he was setting up another meeting. He's going to try and enable the screen share. I know it won't help you anymore, Josh, but any other questions? Let's see, David, you're okay. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how to put this. It seems, you know, all the digital equity stuff is really great. It's a big help to people, but it's of limited time duration. And if we aren't solving the basic infrastructure problems and competitive access to the networks in our towns, then it'll be great for a few years until the money runs out. And then we'll be back to where we were before. And with the exception that, you know, Comcast and Verizon and a few others will have gotten a bunch of money. And so, I mean, how do we address that part of the problem? I know that the infrastructure money is coming, but it seems like we have to look beyond just short-term solutions.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. You know, I think a lot of that, you know, what I would say is like we at MBI are, again, we're engaging in these statewide planning activities. So we know that thinking about competitive landscape, monopoly communities is going to be a component of our statewide planning. I would also say, you know, by virtue of this group, like you all have a lot of thinking on this right now. You know, you all are doing what you should be doing, which is talking to each other, sharing resources and strategizing. And I think that's really important because what it allows you to do is it allows you to inform MBI and our work. So as we are building our programs and going through priorities, you know, I really just encourage you all to keep this line of communication open and, you know, keep messaging to MBI and to your, you know, local elected officials, like what's really important and what's going to make the biggest impact in your communities. You know, I think having that documented is important because it allows us to sort of point back to our stakeholders, you all, and elevate the issues that are critical.
All right, anybody else with a question here? I'm trying to open up this presentation, get back to the presentation because it's now available to me if anybody wants to take a look at it still.
Go ahead, Jonathan, I think that's a question. Go for it.
Yeah, just a quick question. Here at the city, we've been kind of looking at some of the federal funding options that are possibly coming our way. And some of the people in the room, the read on it was more of the funding would go towards rural communities that don't have internet access, period. Do you see that being a hindrance for Massachusetts in general? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think basically the way this shakes out, so yeah, Bob, I don't know which slide is most relevant. If you scroll down, there's maybe like one further. There you go. That one with the cherry picker on it. So this is helpful because it kind of gives you the shape of like all the funding sources that are going to be available. So under the second line there, the U.S. Treasury Capital Projects Fund. So under that program, we have $145 million pinned for a last mile gap connections effort, which is basically to connect the final 3% or as close to as many of the 3% remaining households and businesses in the Commonwealth that do not have an internet connection. We are working through the logistics of that program. It's not open yet, but we are hopeful that that will bridge those sort of last hardest to reach communities, many of which are in rural parts of the state, not all, but the majority, I would say. And so that's sort of the thrust under that program. We have another application in that's likely going to focus on multifamily retrofits. So we are working on that right now. We haven't finalized anything from Treasury, but stay tuned for more word on where that program goes. I think the concern that's probably coming up is more related to the BEAD program. So there is a stipulation in BEAD that essentially says that states need to prioritize the unserved. So unserved meaning no wires to the house, literally cannot get an internet connection before they make investments in underserved or community anchor or other sort of like eligible entities. It is, right now we're still awaiting like final Treasury guidance on like how BEAD, grant programs get rolled out. So I think like we still need more direction from the feds on in practice, what does that look like? I think that there is a hope that we're able to advance, a bulk of work through the last mile program, but we're still working through the financial kind of numbers on like how far that's going to get us. So I think it's a fair concern. I would say on the other side of that is that we do have our existing programs right now under the statewide digital equity program through our partnerships program. For example, like our apartment Wi-Fi program, that's money that all municipalities can take advantage of right now. And the apartment Wi-Fi program in particular is designed to provide free, no access, no barrier Wi-Fi to multifamily buildings, public housing, and affordable housing in particular, on an ongoing basis. And so if folks are interested in that program, they can get in touch. We should have a vehicle to move money on that shortly, and are excited to get more individuals and more cities involved in that aspect in particular.
Josh, is that something that could be used for a community to have in a open public space like a park or some other area like that?
Yeah, so actually if you scroll down, actually go down one more slide, Bob. So yeah, this is under our partnership program. So the apartment Wi-Fi program is specific to multi-dwelling units or multi-dwelling buildings. The public space improvement for an internet modernization could be used for like a park or like a library, community center, any other kind of public space that folks could foreseeably need or require Wi-Fi. That's fully eligible right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And let's see, am I missing anybody else with a question right now? No. Okay, so that is, we have covered everything that was on our list here for MBI, right? Looks like we've got everything there. We have a way to people can get a hold. I don't know if I should scroll down through the rest of these to see if there's anything else that triggers a thought for you, Josh, before you jump on.
I mean, I would just say, yeah, folks can take a look through that. I mean, I guess just, I would love to know, like, or I was going to be sort of cheeky about it, like, when can we expect your application? But like, I would love to see, all folks on this call engage in the planning program. I really, I really strongly encourage you to do that for a number of reasons. It will position your community to take advantage of these funds. It's also like a really good sort of way to engage with MBI. It gives us more visibility to you and likewise visibility to us. So I think it's important for communities to do that because having that kind of one-to-one, it's mutually beneficial. All right, I think you might have had another question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Art.
Yeah, it actually has to do with the planning program, and that is, what's the time frame on that? I mean, if every town goes for this and there's whatever 15 or so consultants that can work on it, how long is it going to take to get through all the plans?
That's a good question. I mean, we anticipate a 6 to 9 month timeline for the planning activities. Our consultants they're getting busy, but I don't think we've reached like critical capacity yet. The funding is available until the end of 2024. So there's still plenty of time to like get in and take advantage. But that being said, I would encourage you to like get in now, because now is really the most important time in front of some of the federal dollars. Because again, the planning program is going to help you think through how to best take advantage of them.
And Josh,
And Art, I'll just
go
say
ahead.
also, I know Cape Cod Commission is a region, they are one of the consultants that's available for this work. And I'd say like working with your local RPA is an I would consider that advantageous as well, particularly.
Yeah,
on
I've
the
actually suggested this to our select board already, and I think I'm kind of on the hook to fill out the application so that they can then approve it. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, we look forward to getting it in.
Okay, I just want to do a quick check before I have another comment or question, but okay, I don't see anybody else with a hand up right now. So Josh, in terms of advocacy, we've talked in our prior meetings about one of the benefits that this group thinks that they can, that will help with the synergy of working together collectively to advocate at the state level, at the federal level, even sharing locally our thoughts with each other on how to advocate locally. Is there anything that you can suggest to us that, that we could do in collaboration with MBI, or any other resources we should be considering when we talk about trying to advocate, whether it's, advocating for, people to get involved in digital equity efforts, or advocating for people to become more aware of, what a public-private partnership might do for them, whatever the topic is.
Yeah. Well, I'll turn over. Cheryl's got one. There's one very clear immediate opportunity that I'll let Cheryl describe.
Sure. Hi, Bob, and all. So the NTIA has posted a request for comments on all Digital Equity Act funding streams. The first set of funding streams was already distributed to states for the statewide planning, but there are 2 other streams. One is a capacity grant, which is a little bit about what Josh spoke earlier. And then the other is a competitive grant process, which is actually, we're not eligible to apply for, but you guys, as well as nonprofits, all types of nonprofits, anchor institutions, et cetera, will be. So there's about 24 questions on that. It's pretty convoluted. I just kind of downloaded it into a more palatable document, which we're going to review in a meeting tomorrow. But I think if as a collective, you guys wanted to respond to those questions, especially on the capacity grant side, because it's asking a lot of important questions about what types of reporting NTIA is going to be requesting of grantees, how should we measure digital literacy, and a lot of things that could actually create greater hindrances, in utilizing the funds or streamline it. So that's a first and a very important aspect that comes to mind, and that we will be hosting a listening session kind of after we have our internal meeting, but we'll also be happy to share those questions with the group for you guys to all contribute to.
Excellent.
And
And
I see some more questions.
what is the deadline for submitting those comments?
So yeah, the deadline for that is 5 p.m. on May 1st, but you don't have to submit it along with us. You guys can submit it as an entity yourselves.
Yeah. And I think that'd be powerful, and I'd say submit it to, if you all collectively decide to submit comments, also do send them to us too, because it's helpful for us to see those as well. So I think, we're encouraging all entities to submit comment. And I think that when there will be a BEAD comment period too, and I would encourage you to submit comment there as well.
Okay, thanks. I know we're winding down on your 5:45 exit time. If there's, we're going to talk about this a little later in the agenda here, but we do have an opportunity to submit something to Mass Municipal Association. I've been back and forth with them on this, and they're willing to put something brief in their April edition for us. So if we could list this as something that the group is going to work on collectively to get comments into, and introduce the if we had a link to what you're describing. I know you're going to discuss it tomorrow, but the timing is probably within the next couple of days to get something over for their deadline. So I can reference it in general terms, but if you had something specific that we could link to in that article, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Sure. Our e-news is going to be released tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow, and there's going to be links to an NTIA listening session. And also we're just going to review kind of a shorter summary of the document to help people get to the questions as well. So we'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I see two hands raised. I don't know if they're for MBI or not, but I see Carl will just go in order. And when you all need to drop off, you can. MBI.
Okay. Sure. Hi, Josh et al. So I did apply for a fellow. I had an interview with Lead for America yesterday. So I don't know what the feedback loop to you is.
Yeah, so we will be debriefing with Lead for America and then making a collective discussion and decision on the 15 fellows.
Okay, and in terms of the Digital Equity Partnerships Program and the kind of 6 functional areas under it, is there an application process that exists for any or all of them?
So there's an application to be a partner, which is basically the fiduciary response, the entity that's fiduciarily responsible for implementing those 6 programs. So, Carl, I can follow up with you offline about this. I can provide more context information. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. And so maybe we can take one more, because I Carl, we know well, but Peter and Courtney, we've never met, so I would love to extend an opportunity to weigh in if we can maybe take one more question before we dip off here.
Okay, go ahead, Courtney. And
I just real quick, we're in Falmouth, we're in an interesting point of transition. We're going into electing a municipal light board to govern our municipal light plant. So this is the next step. But we're also searching for, in terms of funding, the next step for us is to fund the cost of a low-level engineering design. We've made a presentation to the Board of Selectmen to get their blessing on our going after this funding. Once the transition is made to the municipal light board, they'll be the ones running with the ball. But in the meantime, we're looking for that. We've gotten an estimate from the people who did the high-level engineering design of about just under $500,000 to do this study. But this would do a pole analysis and also underground all the issues with the 25% of the town that's underground, so that this would enable us to really hone down the cost of the project. And so it's an essential next step. So what are the funding possibilities as far as MDI is concerned? MBI.
So MBI doesn't have any open funding right now for engineering, but I would recommend talk to folks at Connect Humanity. Carl can put you in touch. The other option that I am encouraging folks to think about is the Economic Development Administration's Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant Program. So that program exists to support economic development activities. I'm sure there are commercial industrial areas of Falmouth that would benefit from your investments. The EDA grants can cover planning as well as implementation. I believe that's an underused resource in this space, and I would highly encourage you that's another place that the Cape Cod Commission could help you out because they're the regional liaison with the EDA. But think
Okay.
about the EDA for the engineering.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Yep.
If it's at all possible, could you forward somehow the, the contact information on that to us?
Do you have, Ariana, you've got the EDA stuff someplace, right?
Yeah.
We can dig it up. Well, we can get it over. Yeah, we can send it to Bob and he can circulate out.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll do
Yeah.
that. Thank you. All right. Hey, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was gonna say, we have to jump, but Bob, we'll make sure that we get, I think we have now everyone on this list into our database. So we'll make sure that you all receive communication from us on these programs and others in the future. If you don't get notified from us in a couple of days, definitely reach out. You should have all of our contact information. I'd say do not feel shy to reach out on any topic. We want to be here. We want to be a resource to you all. And we want to support your work.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a
Awesome.
lot. Really appreciate you
All right.
coming. I think this is very helpful.
Our pleasure. Take care.
All right, thank you. I know. Okay, so anybody, I know they had to leave, but if anybody had any follow-up on that discussion that you'd like to talk about before we jump on to the next topic, feel free just to you can speak on that now if you'd like. No, if Courtney, you still have your hand up. Is that just left over?
No, that's left over. I'll unhand it.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so
Bob,
yes.
Bob Peter from Dartmouth. I
Oh,
had a question. I joined late. The planning that they were talking about, was that like a study that you guys went through, similar to what you went through? Because we're just getting ready. We just received RFPs to do a study similar to you guys in Fairhaven. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it's kind of like double dipping.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that program would fund. I know in our town, we did not have any type of resource like that. We just our town meeting appropriated funds through an article that we submitted for that feasibility studies, a few years ago now. But certainly there are more opportunities out there than when we first started. So I would encourage anybody to check on that resource. It sounds like, he described it generally as planning. So I guess that could be from an initial stage like you're talking about to something more advanced like Courtney's talking about with engineering design. It sounds like that. So, but I don't have expertise on what is available from the EDA grant. So I'd suggest just look in there. And if anybody, finds anything out that you think would be helpful to the others in the coalition here, please, by all means, feel free to send it back to us. Okay, so the next topic we had was discuss the concept of a public-private partnership model for financing.
Bob,
Yes.
I just briefly in terms of the planning study, there was a very good one. There was an example done for Chelsea, Everett, and I think Revere.
Yeah, I put the link to it in the chat.
Yeah, and that's probably a pretty good example of what you could expect as a well-done report. It's a lot like the feasibility type of study that we and other towns had done. So
Yeah, it's
Okay.
closer to a needs assessment.
Okay. All right,
Great, thank you.
that's great. Thank you for that. And I'm not sure how easily, once this meeting is over, we'll be able to get to that, the links that are in there. So if anybody posted anything in there and they could just send it to my email, I'd appreciate it. We'll try to get things like that, onto our website, so it'll be available for future reference. So the public-private partnership is something that I was hoping that we could see from this group, who's interested in the topic. And if you're not familiar with what this is about, it's an effort that a community or a group of communities can engage in, with a financing partner who essentially would provide the resources to be able to fund the project, maybe provide technical expertise, there's a whole range of possibilities in terms of how something like this could be organized and operated, but it's something that I know we are interested in Fairhaven and trying to explore more and understand. It's one of the advantages that I see in it is that it takes some element of risk out of the town and shifts it off into a third party or a collective group of cities and towns locally could engage in something like this and still have some level of risk, but certainly offload a lot of risk to another party and also gain some expertise from someone that might be able to help us all through things that we've never done before. So what they described, and I had listed some of this in the prior email, but what we understand about it is that at least some of these entities that are doing this type of work are looking for populations of 30,000 plus in aggregate to be able to make this feasible. The economies of scale are important, and it was described as to us as between 30,000 and say 500,000 is kind of a good range. It probably depends on who you'd be talking to in that regard. And I sent, just prior to the meeting, I sent a link that I think will be helpful from the NTIA about how to what things to consider in forming a public-private partnership. I see Dave, you got David Cole, you have your hand up. Is that if you want to go ahead?
There, okay. This leads into my interest in trying to promote a kind of partnership across the 4 towns on the South Coast that are all engaging in this: Fairhaven, New Bedford, Dartmouth, and Westport. And whether, if you need a large enough community to interest some private entities in the public-private partnership, why I think we should talk seriously about how we might work together at one way or another, whether we set up separate municipal light plants and then all come together and contract with a private entity to service this whole group. But I think we've got real potential for cost saving and improved efficiency, improved service quality, if we would do that. So if we could maybe arrange some kind of a side meeting of representatives from the 4 towns, I think it would be a useful discussion.
Okay, and I've already spoken for Fairhaven to say that we're interested. Now we're hearing from Westport. I can see Sean, nodding his head there, and I think we have. I know Jonathan, you're from New Bedford, and I know we can't all speak for our communities on the whole probably yet, but if we can at least establish a conversation in our communities and decide, and we could agree to meet later. I'm curious if others, I know we're all not local, so we got people from all, across the state that are on this call. So are there others in other parts of the state that would be interested in, and if you are, do you know of other communities near you that you think might be good to communicate with on this? Art, I see. Go ahead. You can.
Yeah, I think on the public-private partnership, I mean, the NTIA is a good resource. Another one is CTC did a study a few years ago that was very good about public-private partnerships. And it really comes down to, there's a whole continuum of fully publicly funded by your town, fully private, and then there's the middle ground. And the middle ground is perhaps the most attractive, but it's also the most complicated to arrange. And I've talked to probably a dozen or more different companies who are potentially interested in public-private partnerships or equity funders and so forth. And what it really comes down to is what's the return on investment that they can get, and is your community going to give a competitive return on investment? In the case of Falmouth, our cost per passing per house is a little bit higher than they'd like to see. So you won't get a private entity funding the whole thing, but they'll put up some of the money, maybe even half or 2/3 of the money. So then it comes down to where do you get the other part of it? And if you do that, something like that, and then the company puts up part and the town puts up part, then how do you do revenue sharing? And all those things have to be figured out. Yeah, the size that the companies are looking for, it varies. 25, 30,000 tends to be a minimum. I was involved with some discussions of one company, I don't think I can name, that was interested in passing a minimum of 100,000 homes. And we're willing to put up like half the money that was necessary. So I think that really helps, but then it's going to come down to, can you get your town or your city to come up with the remaining part of it? Or how much can we get the state to come up with if the private entity comes up? And I think, in Falmouth, we're hoping, we don't have any reason to believe that it will happen, but we're hoping that if we get a private partner to come in and do perhaps a majority of the costs, and we can get the state and the town then to split the remaining, we have, a reasonable deal. But
I think one of the things that I heard on this is that the financial partner could take the lead in trying to, maximize funding sources, other than that would come from them or the community. In other words, grant programs and, so it probably depends on how things are structured. And I recognize myself that, the more partners you have, probably the more complicated it becomes, because you're dealing with this, say the example that was brought up before with 4 local communities that were mentioned on this call. You're talking about, how do you form this partnership to have each community have their own interests represented, make sure that you have the your goals are aligned, how you, as you mentioned, revenue sharing, all those things. It's not going to be a simple undertaking to get to a point where there can be agreement among that many parties. And but you'd start with trying to gauge interest and trying to walk through the steps that you'd need to follow. And in the end, there could be, if you look at the reference from the NTIA, you pull together and see what your alignment is, and then you reach out and maybe do a request for information from parties that are in this field, to try and see who might be interested in partnering with the collective group. So I think if we break off in groups of communities that want to explore it further, we might be able to share resources. Our own time and efforts can probably be consolidated. We may need procurement assistance and legal counsel and things like that. That we certainly don't need to. Well, we can probably help each other along in a way that we're not, multiplying the same amount of effort across the board times 4 or however many communities that are involved.
Absolutely. And I think on the Cape, there's an interest in towns trying to work together. You get into a little bit of the issue of trying to herd cats at that point, but and I think, one of the things is that the further down the path the town gets in terms of doing its own planning, the more it becomes set and it's what it expects and so forth. And if you're going to have a coalition or a partnership of multiple towns, there has to be some recognition that, a private partner is only going to go so far in terms of, making special deals with everybody. And so there's going to be a certain amount of commonality and so forth.
Right.
They aren't going to want to do different services and different rates for every town and call it a 4-town coalition. And so you've got to come together on that, which is it's all possible. It just, people have to think about it going into that.
Right. Yeah. And Okay, David, you have, go ahead.
Yeah, just, I think we need to distinguish between the operational aspects and the financing aspects. And I think that I'm talking much more in terms of the operational side of it, to get somebody to come and work with across the 4 towns in implementing the operational aspects, and then leaving it up to the towns to work out their own financial systems and procedures with their own separate entities of municipal light plants or whatever. So I think we need to keep those two quite separate. I think the one that is mainly operational could be much easier to structure. The one that gets into the financial, it would be very difficult, not to be left up, I think, to the individual towns. Just
Yeah, and that's where the alignment, needs to be, whoever agrees to be in this group together needs to have the same interest. So if
Yep.
not all communities feel that way, some communities feel like, well, we want to get the funding else, through this collaborative, then we, then it may not work for all, so it's just a matter of, I think, having a separate conversation away from these coalition meetings where we can kind of dig into the details and discuss it. And so, my concern, the concern I have is that, just say we identified 4 here locally that were mentioned. And then, we really start to get into it in earnest, and we're making some good headway. And then we're approached by another local community near us that really wants to get in. It might be difficult to try and backtrack and incorporate someone else when you're a certain, time down the road. So what I'm trying to do is try and see if we can get the word out to as many of the communities near us as possible, who we know are actively involved in this space, and just, put the word out to them so that we don't start off on something without including everyone that might be interested. Of course, it's hard to define where draw the line on that, but I did reach out. I know that some people from Acushnet had expressed interest locally to us. The town administrator from Mattapoisett, I thought he was maybe going to be on this call. He also expressed interest. So there's a couple of smaller communities near us that have also expressed interest. But is there? So we've heard from the people down the Cape about this in Falmouth area. Is anybody else on the call? Had any discussion in this area with other communities near you, or you think this something you might want to consider? Because I'm thinking that even if this ends up resulting in, a group here in the South Coast and another group on the North Shore, another group out west that are kind of going down the same path, we may be able to share information with each other, even though we're not trying to work together with the other group. Again, we might be able to learn from each other. And for example, if we were trying to look for companies that might be interested in this, and Falmouth has already talked to a dozen, financial equity firms that do this, it might, save us all some time to, trying to, gather up some resources there to send in requests for information out to, that kind of thing. So anybody else, Carl, or let's see, Tom, who's on the phone?
We're geographically undesirable out here in the West, so we get that. But we're hoping that if I guess Springfield was entertaining the thought of partnering with Entry Point, I think East Long Meadow still may be. So there'd be some synergies there and a possibility, but we do worry about the control factor. We worry about, as you said, how do you split the pie financially? So it's not a stone that we're not willing to turn over. We just think that, right now we're sort of marching to the beat of our own drummer and hoping that we can obviously do this on our own, but we're clearly open to the possibility of PPP, but we just don't know if we're going to be able to get enough, economies of scale really to attract a financier.
Okay. Are you raising your hand again, Courtney? Is that you?
Yeah, I think that if we're going to make, I think for any private ISP to come in and make a substantial investment and perhaps also run the network, operate it, and so forth. And you start talking about partnership arrangements and revenue sharing and all of that. If it turns out that there are 10 different or 15 different communities with 10 or 15 different perceptions of how much is an appropriate revenue sharing, and puts a lot of essentially cost increasing administrative headaches for a potential ISP is not going to be interested. And so I think part of the challenge is, if you're going to have a partnership, yes, there may be separate agreements with each town, but if there's a sort of common thread to it, and the main thing is, the main question is, you have to keep in mind is, what is the ultimate goal for all of us? The ultimate goal for all of us is to have a high-speed fiber optic broadband that serves the absolute most number of people. And so what you
At a
want to do
price
is
point that
start
people
from
can
that
afford.
point and work backwards. And not get too greedy.
Yeah, no, it's true. And Carl just said it, at a price point that people can afford. Good point. And you're right. So one thought I had about how to figure out who locally to work with might be, the consideration of where people are at this point in time. So say in the example that was just mentioned of the 4 communities near us, we all seem to be in a kind of a similar, frame of mind about getting moving on this sooner rather than later, where other communities may come in later down the road. Well, they may need to work together for their own partnership if there's an interest in that type of thing. But yeah, so it may not be for all of us or any of us, but in my mind, it's a question that needs to be answered. For us here in Fairhaven, anyways, does it make sense, and do we have willing partners? So, Art, your hand is up.
Yeah, just that, any company that comes in and does a partnership with you, no matter, is almost definitely going to be looking to expand beyond those boundaries as quickly as they can. So you may start off with the 4 towns or whatever, but your neighbors, will get included.
Okay.
Eventually, because they want to get the best economy of scale that they can.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, when whatever agreement is signed, when you first, enter an agreement like that, it's going to include a provision for what happens upon expansion like that. What are the terms for the existing parties and the terms for the new parties coming on board? How does that work? So, yeah. And Carl, go ahead.
Peter was ahead of me if he wants to talk.
Oh, you know what? For some reason on my screen, I'm not seeing everybody. And Peter, I apologize because I think that's the second time I missed you.
Not a problem. Yeah, I was just gonna say, for Dartmouth, when we first started our committee, they were very interested in doing a partnership with whoever was in the area that wanted to do it. So I'm sure and you told me that I don't have video of Sean, but you told me Sean was shaking his head. So that's a good indication that the select board are behind it for us. The only thing I would say about the South Coast is I'm not sure if we want to try to involve UMass Dartmouth also. I want to say about a year and a half ago, the town's IT people and the UMass IT people kind of had a feeling out meeting, I should say, about internet service providers and everything else, about doing some connections around town. And they were talking about how they already have a service that goes into the university that they thought we could kind of piggyback off of. So there might already be a internet service provider in the area that's got some infrastructure going to UMass Dartmouth campus. So it would kind of be branching off from that. And then also, with a state university involved, we might be able to get some funding that isn't available to everyone else. So that would be my thought and I got a good working relationship with some people over at UMass. So if you want, I can reach out to them, and I'm sure if we set up some kind of subcommittee to talk about it. I'm sure they would send a few people to talk about it as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I would suggest that since that's a, that's maybe leave that to the people in Dartmouth to figure out because, well, although it's a state university, right? So maybe it's not, yeah, I would say that's an interesting concept and maybe there's even some opportunity for them. Are you suggesting that it is they already have fiber going into their, and it's
Oh,
fiber?
Yeah, I know they have some kind of service already
Okay,
in place. And they've already worked with an internet service provider because they're basically all their UMass Dartmouth campuses are connected and through that service provider, from my understanding, and they were going to see if the town could start purchasing some services from them. And it kind of died out because no one ever really followed up. And then we started this whole broadband study committee instead. So it'd be interesting to see their take on it.
Okay, thank you. And I see your hand up, Carl. I just want to mention one thing too. When I believe that what they'll be looking to do is to include in their the financial partner that you deal with would look at the assets that can be provided by individual communities and consider that in these partnerships. So in other words, in our town, we have a municipal fiber loop that runs throughout the town already, serving our municipal buildings. So they would consider that in this agreement and how that would help leverage this opportunity. And likewise, I would think something like that would play into it as well. If there's an opportunity to use an existing infrastructure in some way to carry as a backbone for other branching out, then that's something that could be very beneficial. But go ahead, Carl.
So I just wanted to share our experience because at the beginning of this, I pushed very hard to do a regional digital equity plan and kind of dragged Revere and Everett into it. And that was fine. The issues are very similar across the three cities, and doing it together, I think, definitely helped. But what came out of it at the end was each municipality had a different idea of the pace at which they wanted to proceed. And so we're going to be going much faster than any of our neighbors. I'm a little scared of the public-private model. It seems to me like it's just recreating the, kind of cable agreements that got us into this mess. And I don't really want someone whose entire motive is profit to be managing access for our residents.
Yeah, I will say, at least to the, who I've spoken to about this, that the models was described to me as something that could be, the city or town that enters into the agreement could, there's flexibility to arrange it such that at the end of a term, whenever that is, and it's probably a long term, the asset could be owned by the municipality, and there could be buyout provisions. And so there's like this kind of sliding scale along the way of how much or how little you want to bear the risk, and how much or little you want to have the benefit of ownership of the system. So as I think someone described earlier on the call, you have the two extremes, one being the municipality can own the infrastructure entirely, bear the entire burden of building the infrastructure, operating it, and et cetera. And probably if it works out well, get the greatest return on your investment. And the other side is something completely private, where the municipality bears no risk, it doesn't have to do anything in terms of operations and maintenance, et cetera, but has no control over it. And in that model, I would agree in that sense, if the agreement doesn't allow the municipality to have any ownership rights or ability to buy out the system in the future, or eventually own it in some way down the road, or have a stake in the the revenues. It's I would agree. If you're in that mode, then it might not look much like we all have right now. I was hoping.
My only caution in that is that the amount of capital that any of these companies have is finite. And they're going to be looking for the deals that give them the best returns. And that will put all of us negotiating with them at a competitive disadvantage and be pushing more towards a race to the bottom.
So we would be, I was thinking more if we banded together and we had, several communities working together, that would help our competitive advantage. But yours, I guess it's a different logic,
It's
maybe I'm glass half full.
maybe
or too naive.
We have two legacy providers that in theory could do this, Verizon and Comcast, and we've spoken to both of them, and Verizon has wired communities all around us with FiOS, and they don't see the economics in Chelsea to do it. So they've asked us, both of them, how much are you willing to pay us to come in and do this?
Yeah, I see. So I think the disconnect here is that, that between what I'm thinking and what you're describing is that in that scenario, you would end up with still a single or two providers that you have now. I think many of the communities that are represented on this call right now have a single option for internet in their community. So
all we have is coax over Comcast, but
right.
Verizon owns half of our telephone poles.
Right. So the model that I know, at least I know that I was thinking of when I started thinking about this public-private partnership, is one that would allow an open access model. So where the infrastructure would be built, and then any internet service provider that wants to provide the service could come onto that open access infrastructure, and therefore the competitive, you'd provide the competition that we're all looking for in that sense. So again, that's a bit different, and it would I just think it's worthwhile for the communities that are interested in exploring it further to at least discuss that as a possibility. I do think that's a model that has a potential.
No, and I forget who said it, but it is a function of risk tolerance, and it may also be a function of how close you are to your bonding cap.
Yes, yeah. And I think, to me, what we've struggled with in our town of Fairhaven is trying to get the right message out to the people in the community about what the options are. And we have yet to really understand what this public-private partnership could really look like. So we have an idea what it would look like to do it all on our own. And we went through the municipal light, establishing that as in our community for a model that we could use. And we know a little bit about the enterprise fund model, but we haven't been able to present something to the community that says, here's another option that you might want to consider. And then I think there's a whole lot of outreach that we'd need to do to really explain, what the options are, and try to get some feedback from the community on what they want to do, if anything, on this. So, okay, so we're doing pretty well on our agenda. Does anybody else want to Okay, I still see a hand raised. Tom, I apologize. Go ahead,
No,
Tom.
no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, I mean, for the sake of argument, I don't think we should kick it around any further here. As long as there, are safeguards built in that satisfy the community's interest and, we march forward together and there's strength in numbers, right? So just keep using the coalition as a resource to forward this kind of information so that all communities can either take advantage of it or continue on their own, either way. But
Yeah,
it's
all right.
great to be able to at least think about sharing resources like that. And that's exactly what we're hoping to gain out of this.
Okay, thanks. And we'll move on, but so we were scheduled to move on to the next topic at 5:30. We can start that a little early, but before we jump onto that topic, I wanted to ask, based on the discussion point from MBI about the NTIA questionnaire that they're circulating for feedback. Does this, do the people on this call right now feel like that's something we should be trying to work together to try? It sounds like we have, reasonable amount of time because the deadline, I think he said, was May 1st. So we have over a month to be able to collect our thoughts and submit comments on that. I'm just trying to gauge interest in that. I know on other calls, there was definitely an interest in trying to use our collective voices in a capacity to engage in these kind of advocacy efforts. So is anybody, maybe just nod your head or shake your head if you don't think we should be involved, and go ahead, Art.
Yeah, in general, I think it's good to respond to these things, but we need to look at it first. I mean, they said it was like 20 some questions that were complex. And so we'd have to look before deciding, we'd have to look at it and see whether we can do anything relevant or if it's just a bunch of stuff that's not going to help us or anybody else.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't have any idea what's in it myself, but what I'm thinking is if the concept sounds like something that fits the bill for what was described in our prior meetings where we said, hey, we should use our collective voices to advocate, and MBI is suggesting this is a really good fit for that. And if people are generally conceptually think it's a good idea, then what we could do is we could focus our efforts on our next meeting around trying to figure out what the answer to these are, or between now and then, possibly, through email exchanges or some other form, we could start to collect, feedback on this, and then maybe during that meeting, just kind of finalize what our comments would be. So, all right, so we'll, when we get the information from MBI, circulate it to people. What I want to be, cognizant of is as MBI starts to send information out to this group, I don't want to replicate that and have you all get bombarded with too many emails. I know as it is right now, we're getting close to these meetings. I've kind of reached out to you several times, and I don't want to get you tired so that you turn off the switch. But all right, so our next topic, which we can start to jump into now, is to preview the new website that Chris McClure has been working on for us. Now, the problem is, no, we now have the ability to share the screen, right? So let's see if you want to attempt to do that, Chris, and if it gives you an error message, then I'll try to, let me see.
Okay.
Let me make host. I think I can make you the host right now and see how that works.
Can you guys see this?
Perfect.
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Okay, cool. Thanks, Bob. Well, if you know me, you know I love a good portal, so I can't help myself with my with some emergency management background too. So it accomplishes a couple of things. It gives us one-stop shopping, just an easy URL to remember that I put in the chat. So we just grabbed ma-bc.org. So one-stop shopping, everything related to the group is here, and it gives us that nice common operating picture so we can all see in real time what's going on, and we start building institutional knowledge. So as members join right down the road, they can get caught up. It gives us a nice way to reference or link to things. So it's pretty simple right now. It's all just built in Google Sites and just Google architecture. So if we need to give access to something, anyone with any flavor of Google account, whether your organization uses Google or you just have a a free Gmail account, we can set permissions that way. So I just made this placeholder graphic for now. I've got the organizations on the homepage. Be easy enough to add links if you've got your own digital plans or equity plans as we go from there. I'd like to get maybe a paragraph or two about the organization, Bob. So as we start thinking, maybe just a little abstract about the mission or other things that we want to get linked up. Excuse me.
Yeah, thanks. When we talked about that a little bit when we first formed, and we haven't gone back to it. So maybe I'll let you finish your presentation here, and then maybe we can come back and just touch on that a bit.
Yeah, no problem. I've been talking all day, so I'm coughing a little bit here, but let me. So we also have the listserv set up, and I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat here too. So it's just members at ma-bc.org. The only people that are allowed to email that are members of the group, so we don't have to worry about getting spammed. I do have a little contact mail link here that should just said Bob and me an email if people just want to reach out. Just threw together a quick calendar, so we've just been putting the meetings on here. Any other events of note we can add to that as we go. I've been taking the meetings and we'll add this one. We've got a YouTube playlist, so again, people can refer back to that or get caught up if new members join. We've got the archive, so this is kind of a cool feature. So basically all the correspondence for the group is getting captured here. So again, if you missed an email or you join or organization joins later and wants to search something, that's all being captured here in the archive. We've got a quick form for communities that are interested in signing up. You can just fill out this quick Google form, tell us a little bit about the organization, and we can get you added to the listserv. We've got all of our files to date, so I actually grabbed Josh's presentation and threw it in here, so all that's here together. So I've got all the documents that Bob has shared to date, and then I actually threw in some MBI files here, so that's all in one place. And then just finally, I've got a link to the Broadband Institute. So if anyone wants to apply for that grant or access any of the MBI resources, those are there. So again, this was all just real quick. We can put anything we want on here. It's just a kind of a convenient way of keeping everything together for the group as we grow. And if we want to link out to something specific or share with another organization or MBI or MMA or something, we can direct them back here.
Excellent. And so I don't know if this makes sense, but if we were to consider, say, Josh Eichen or someone from MBI to be a member, so to speak, that then if they were to use this this members list, they could email to us in that capacity and not just have to go through a static list that they have, because it's hopefully that will continue to grow in numbers.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we can give anyone access to the group to be able to email. So
Perfect.
we just need to add them.
All right, excellent. And that, the definition that I have is someone that's a member of this coalition is basically anybody that's, that's joined one of our meetings or has expressed an interest in following us, through, being on the listserv or email or anything like that. So if anyone, that's just my own thoughts. If anyone has any other thoughts on how we should be managing that, please, speak up, or if something comes to mind later, you can email both Chris and myself. And we can try to accommodate things like that. And I would encourage anybody who has any links that you think we should, put in there. Like, I know, I think Art, you mentioned a couple good links that maybe would be helpful for us. The study that you mentioned from CTC, was it? Which I wasn't familiar with that. If
I just sent you that their paper.
Yeah, if you can do that, and we'll try to maybe, Chris, I don't know if we can try to think of how to categorize all these links into, resources that'll be.
Yeah, I can just make a page of resource links, so, that
Okay.
and then we can just list them out with a little description. We can just dedicate a whole page to that. And if
Excellent.
someone like Josh wants to be able to mail the group, we can actually set his mail preferences so that he mails, but he doesn't receive it, so we don't annoy him with all the messages that go back and forth in the group if he doesn't want to see everything.
Oh, yeah, good point. And maybe we can reach out to him. If you don't mind doing that, Chris, just if you could communicate with him and just let him know that those are the options and ask him what, how he wants to set that up, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
And anybody, so those, one of the things we did when we first started was before even our first meeting, I had reached out to you all and quite a number of people responded by saying, here's where our community stands right now. You sent us those, those letters, and those are all in there, like Chris just showed you. So if there's anybody who's on the call right now whose community does not have a synopsis of where they stand and would like to submit that, I'd definitely encourage that. I think those are great to read through. Anybody that's coming in, and we can encourage anybody that joins to do something similar.
Yeah, we could do a similar thing. We could do a little biography page for each participating group. We could have a little table with a name and a link to anything you're working on, a little description, contact information.
Okay.
So it's really whatever we want it to be.
All right, excellent. And all right, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that towns have their own websites, like Falmouth.net has one.
Yes.
Putting a link to those might be useful.
Yes,
And,
excellent point.
Let me just mention again that we did a few, Falmouth.net we did a few videos and so forth about what community broadband meant and what fiber was about. And this group or anybody within this group is certainly free to use those.
Yeah, if you want to send them over to me, I can get those all linked within the playlist. And
yeah, they're just, if you go to the Falmouth.net .org website and resources, you'll see them all, I think.
Yeah, and I have a couple, Chris, even though I gave you some bare bones things to start this with, but I do have a few things on our Fairhaven website that I will try and get over to you, some resource documents and similarly, some articles. And we had a couple webinars that we recorded. I don't know if that's too much, but again, if it's maybe we could categorize things, when you have that link to the community, if it links back to our website, that's probably the easiest thing to do on that. But all right, so yeah, anybody that has anything else they want to share on that, please feel free. So we are anybody have anything else on that before we move on to the next subject? Okay, and so what the plan is that, we wanted to review this with anybody that showed up at this meeting and make sure that everyone was okay with kind of going live with the website. So right now, to this point, it's been kind of, you had to have the link to be able to find us on this website. But if everyone's okay with it, then Chris would be ready to tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, to make this searchable. And if anybody just happens to Google Mass Broadband, it would come up. Is that correct, Chris?
Yep, we're good to go.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. And so let's see. We're at discuss the prospect of the coalition highlighting being highlighted in the Mass Municipal Bulletin. So what I'd like to do, actually, the last thing we had was discuss advocacy efforts in general. So I think we kind of already covered that. So with the time we have left, I was hoping that we could maybe just get some bullet points from people about what what we want to say in the Mass Municipal Association Bulletin. So what I asked them is, about how much length can we, expect here? How many words should we use as a cutoff on this? And he said, about 300, which is not a lot. So we have to be really concise with our message. He did say, don't worry about, if it's a little longer, he'll kind of figure out how to, pull it back. And this is he's allowing us to send him what we'd like the message to be, rather than him just writing an article, just interviewing and writing an article on us. So I think that's helpful because, he may decide to, change it in some way, but at least we can convey what our message is. So I think if we track back to the very important question that Chris asked earlier, is on our website, what do we want our mission statement to read? And I think, you know, in our earlier meetings, we did discuss that a little bit. We didn't really kind of settle on something, but now we're becoming, with a website, we're becoming a little more official, and I think we need to kind of have what everyone feels comfortable with on that. So you want to, you know, I could try to look back and pull up what people submitted that last time, but we've been a little further down the road. And anybody want to just throw out a thought about how that should read? You know, if no one has anything in particular, I can try to just pull something together myself. I just didn't want to move forward with things without giving people an opportunity to, you know, to have some input. And again, if you want to just think about that for a minute, is there, you know, what I'm thinking is that the outline for this would be to, you know, just say, hey, this is a group that came together in January. Here are the communities that have participated. List them if we've got room to do that, or just describe, if we don't have the number of words to do that, we could just say we have communities from, you know, North Shore, you know, Greater Boston area, Cape Cod, South Coast, and in Western Mass. It's kind of all over the state, and that we come together to try and learn from each other, and, you know, share thoughts and concerns. And here are some of the topics we've talked about. We're starting to, you know, host guest speakers, and, you know, mention that we've had mass broadband on. And by the way, when we met last, one of the topics that we talked about trying to cover in this meeting, or it came up in between the meetings, I think, was Westport interested in the comparing the municipal light model versus an enterprise fund model. And we were hopeful that we could get someone to discuss that with us, and they didn't get back to us. And so that's not something that I've forgotten about, but it's just, you know, this seemed like a couple of good topics to get in there for tonight. And the next meeting, it sounds like one of the big topics we'll be able to have is that, you know, NTIA, you know, comment period. But it'd be, maybe we can, you know, also have a guest speaker. So, you know, so anyways, it's the outline I was thinking is kind of to talk a little bit what our meetings have been like, you know, who's in the group, you know, that we plan on doing some advocacy through things like the NTIA comments period. Is there anything I'm missing? Anybody wants to throw out there? No, maybe also that the, you know, the private partnerships concept is something that we've discussed, that the thought that some of the communities are working on digital equity, you know, in their own communities, and that there might be some opportunity to work together with other communities on that. Like, I guess, Carl, you what you described already took place on that front, right? You did work with a couple, with Revere and
Everett.
Revere and Everett, and that was on your digital equity plan, right?
Yes, and then the three of us applied for a grant together through Connecting Humanity to create digital action plans, which is
okay.
roughly a 20% design of what the network would look like and a broad cost estimate.
Okay, so that, even though we can't take credit for this group having any part of that, I think it's a great example of what can happen when communities get together, and that there might be an opportunity for us to, you know, to spur interest with other communities just from this group discussing these kind of things. So if it's appropriate, you know, I could mention that if there's space in this thing, you know, I don't know how we feel about that, but would that be, you know, using that as an example, but, or I could just say in general, you know, communities have an opportunity to work together on digital equity planning efforts, you know, something like that. Okay. And but maybe that's something that if you have any, so was that process was completed and you actually have an, you know, work output from that, correct?
I'm supposed to get the final version tomorrow.
Oh, well, if that's the case, I'm not saying that we would, you know, talk about that in Mass Municipal article, but if that's something that you think would help other communities and you're willing to share it, we could
Oh,
post that.
yeah, it's a public record.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, that might be a great thing to post on our website too, just for people to see what kind of work other communities are doing. I mean, the less reinventing of the wheel, the better off we'll all be, is in my
No,
opinion.
and also as you're working through it, you know, a lot of thought and effort went into the structure and what needs to be included, and we iterated several times to get it to what I think is a quality document.
Great, excellent. So yeah, so that's, again, once, you know, communities start, I think Sean McDonald said it, right? If you can learn from another community and not have to start at square one, you know, I'm all in favor of that on both ends. So
Just to share a couple of things on that front, as I mentioned earlier, it was funny, I was working with Josh when he was with MAPC on the digital equity piece there. So we've actually done quite a bit with MAPC. That the group, there were some good presentations. So I just put a link in the chat. So there's a group called the Tech Collaborative that gave a presentation. They're on the North Shore. I think they're up in Amesbury. They do computer upcycling. So we're actually partnering with them in Watertown. Well, they'll take used devices. They'll do collection, stations at your library or DPW. They're actually working with our recycling group. And they will do a wipe on the devices, but then they'll refurbish them and make them available to people in the community who need devices. So they're solving that end piece of putting devices in people's hands. So that we actually had one pickup with them already. And then in our infancy, we've got just a little digital equity page that we've got going in Watertown. There's a good presentation there that the MAPC did on some of the affordable programs to Verizon and Comcast and things. And there's a whole presentation on the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute there. And then I will just mention that Boston completed a digital equity plan and published. I just put a link to it in the chat. And again, we can put all this on the, I'll put all this together in an email and put it on the portal. And then Watertown did get the MBI grant to get started, and we are using the same vendor that Boston did. They're on the list, the approved list with MBI, so we're going to be using the same firm to conduct ours. But that's the Boston complete plan too that may be worth looking over.
Who is the firm?
Oh, I forget their name.
Okay.
CTG.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's okay. Good. Yeah.
CTC. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So our town of Fairhaven is that was one of the two qualified consultants that were, authorized for the town to use in Fairhaven. So, and they mentioned that they were working on those. So, all right, Art, go ahead. Sorry, Art.
Just when we're thinking about speakers and so forth, I'd like to suggest that we, give John Gonzalez, a 30-minute window, talk about his experience, what he knows. I mean, he and his boss, Chris Mitchell, are really the national experts in terms of what's going on in municipal broadband and how the government is funding it and so forth. And, it's an incredible resource to have him even interested in talking with, being with us.
Yeah, thanks. I had the opportunity to meet both of them. I know I met Sean, and I'm pretty sure that Chris was also at the MBI conference that they held back in October. So there was some great resources available there, and also the NDIA. Is that anybody on this familiar with they have a listserv as well that you can join. You're going to get bombarded with emails on that one if you're interested, though. That's something. Chris, are you familiar with that group? Chris McClure?
No.
Okay, I can try. I know that's one of they had a part in in, a major part in the presentations that took place at that MBI conference back in October. And they are a great resource. They have a lot of information. So, we could at least link to their website. Again, it's NDIA, and I can send that over to you, Chris.
Okay.
If you don't hear from me, just remind me, but.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we are, we basically finished with our regular agenda. We can end it. We can end early. We don't have to go all the way to 6. Does anybody have any, final thoughts before we close out? So,
Did we decide on a regular day of the week to meet? Going
oh,
forward?
thank you. Thank you for that. Good idea. What's interesting here is though, we have had, I would say, a core group of about, maybe 6 or so people that have, I think, been at all 3 of the meetings, but in between we've had, a combination of different people at each one of the 3 meetings. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on how to best go about that. I know we tried to do a poll. I know Sean, Gross, that works for the city of New Bedford, had sent something out initially to us, and then, I don't think that one element of the survey really got was worked out very well. I don't know if that's something that we could do on the website, Chris. That might be like to take a poll and have it linked.
Yeah,
to the
yeah, we can do a form to collect that. Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. So maybe as people, maybe we should probably notify anybody on the list right now that we're trying to take that poll, and make sure we can pick a time that works for, we're never going to get everyone all synced up, but at least we can get the majority. Or, if we find like there's a kind of even split between, say, Wednesday and Thursday or whatever the days are, maybe we can alternate, every other month and just to try and get as many people on as possible. But all right, well, anything else from anybody before we sign off? And again, for anybody that's new here, since we established this group, we're not really formal in terms of taking detailed meeting minutes or, publishing anything like that, but we're recording the meetings. So if anybody wants to go back, they can look at them. And, if anyone would like to see it done differently, then I'd like to see you volunteer to take the notes. It's my least favorite thing. But all right, well, I appreciate everyone getting together. Again, thanks again, Chris, for the great work on the website, pulling that together. And if anyone thinks of anything between now and, sometime tomorrow about thoughts to mention to the Mass Municipal Association, let me know. And if I, if I can get to a good place with some draft comments back and forth between myself and this contact at MBI, at Mass Municipal Association, I'll try to get them out to you to see if you guys want to comment on them. But it's a kind of a short time frame here for me to get that through. So hopefully you can trust me to do the best I can. And unless you want to hook up with me for a call on that later, but okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. And if you have a good night, we'll try to, take that poll and see what's the best time and date for everyone next month. And we'll let you know when that's going to be.
Thank you for your efforts, Bob. We appreciate it.
And I will reach out to the 4 communities, the other 3 communities that expressed interest: Dartmouth, Westport, and New Bedford, through the contacts I have, here, and just we'll try to set up a date where we can have a separate call to just talk about public-private partnership. And appreciate you guys showing your interest in that. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.